The text message glowed on my phone screen at 11:47 p.m. Storm's getting worse. Highways closed. You can stay at my place if you need to. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, heart racing as I typed the words that would change everything, only if it's your bed. I hit send before I could think twice, then watched in horror as those 5 words traveled across the digital void to my boss, my very attractive, very single dad boss. I never expected to find myself stranded at the office that night, let alone making such a bold proposition. But sometimes the most unexpected moments lead us down paths we never imagined. This is the story of how a blizzard, a workplace crush, and one impulsive text message completely transformed my life. 6 months earlier, I'd started working at Horizon Marketing as a junior account manager. The job itself was everything I'd hoped for after graduating with my business degree, but what I hadn't anticipated was Daniel Matthews, the company's founder, my direct supervisor, and quite possibly the most captivating man I'd ever met. Daniel was 38 to my 26, with salt and pepper hair that somehow made him look distinguished rather than old. His eyes were a warm brown that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which wasn't often enough. He ran the company with quiet confidence, respected by everyone but close to almost no one. The only time I saw him truly light up was when he mentioned his daughter, Lily. "Emma, do you have the Henderson proposal?" Daniel asked one morning, leaning against my cubicle wall. I'd been at Horizon for just 2 weeks, and his presence still made me nervous. "Right here," I said, handing him the folder I'd prepared. I added some additional market research in Section 3 that might help with their concerns about demographic reach. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising slightly. "This is thorough. Good work." "Thank you," I replied, trying not to sound too eager for his approval. He lingered a moment longer than necessary. "My daughter has a school project about careers. I told her I'd ask if anyone at the office would be willing to answer some questions for her." "I'd be happy to help," I offered immediately. "Really?" Relief softened his features. "That would be great. She's 10 and very curious about everything. Her mom." He paused, a shadow crossing his face. "Her mom isn't in the picture anymore, so I try to connect her with different people when I can." That was the first glimpse I got of Daniel beyond the boss, Daniel the father, Daniel the man carrying responsibilities I couldn't fully comprehend. Over the following months, I learned more about him in fragments. His wife had left when Lily was 4, moving across the country with minimal contact since. He'd built his business while raising his daughter alone, somehow managing both with a dedication that left me in awe. I met Lily a few times when she came to the office after school, a precocious child with her father's eyes and a smile that came much more readily than his. What started as professional admiration slowly evolved into something deeper. I found myself looking forward to our meetings, savoring the brief moments when his professional facade would slip and I'd catch a glimpse of his dry humor or unexpected kindness. But I kept these feelings firmly locked away. Office romances were complicated enough without adding a boss-employee dynamic and a child into the mix. Then came the night of the blizzard. I'd stayed late to finish a presentation for a major client meeting the next morning. The weather forecast had mentioned snow, but I hadn't realized how quickly the storm would intensify. By the time I finished my work at 11:30 p.m., the world outside had transformed into a swirling white nightmare. "You're still here?" Daniel's voice startled me as I gathered my things. "Just finishing up the Westfield presentation," I explained, trying to ignore how the dim after-hours lighting softened his features. He frowned, looking out the window. "Have you seen the weather? They've closed the highway already." My apartment was a 30-minute drive in good conditions, requiring a stretch on that very highway. "I'll find a hotel nearby," I said, though the prospect of venturing out into the storm was daunting. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as a sign of internal debate. "Look, I only live 10 minutes from here on surface streets. You could." He hesitated. "You could stay at my place tonight. The guest room is made up." My heart skipped. I wouldn't want to impose. What about Lily? She's at my sister's for a sleepover. School project. He shrugged. It's just an offer. Probably safer than driving in this. Let me check the forecast again, I said, pulling out my phone to hide my flustered reaction. The news was worse than expected. The storm had intensified, with predictions of over 2 feet of snow by morning. As I scrolled through weather alerts, Daniel grabbed his coat. I need to head out now before it gets worse. Think about it, the offer stands. He scribbled his address on a sticky note and placed it on my desk. Text me if you decide to come over. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet office, weighing my options. The rational choice was clear: staying at Daniel's was safer than attempting to drive home or even to a nearby hotel. But nothing felt rational about spending the night at my boss's house, especially not when I'd spent months trying to suppress my attraction to him. I finally packed up and made my way to the parking garage, only to find my car wouldn't start, battery dead from the extreme cold. That settled it. I called a rideshare, grateful to find a driver still operating, and texted Daniel that I'd be taking him up on his offer after all. The ride to his house was tense, the car sliding occasionally on the increasingly treacherous roads. By the time we arrived at Daniel's address, a modest 2-story home with warm lights glowing from within, I was genuinely relieved just to have arrived safely. Daniel opened the door before I could knock, concern evident on his face. You made it. I was starting to worry. My car wouldn't start, I explained, stamping snow from my boots. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Of course. He took my coat, his fingers briefly brushing mine. Anyone would do the same. But as he showed me around his home, a surprisingly cozy space with photographs of Lily everywhere and bookshelves overflowing with both business texts and children's stories, I knew that wasn't true. Daniel Matthews wasn't just anyone. We settled into an unexpectedly comfortable rhythm. He made us tea while I called my roommate to explain the situation. We discussed the presentation I'd been working on, and he offered some insightful suggestions. It felt strangely natural, as if the office hierarchy had been temporarily suspended. The guest room is upstairs, first door on the right, he said eventually, glancing at the clock that showed it was approaching midnight. Bathrooms across the hall. There should be towels and everything you need. Thank you again, I said, suddenly shy now that the moment to retreat to separate rooms had arrived. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Good night, Emma. I headed upstairs, found the guest room, tastefully decorated in neutral tones, and sat on the edge of the bed. The strangeness of the situation hit me all at once. I was in Daniel Matthews' house. My boss. The man whose rare smiles made my workday. The single father who'd built a life for himself and his daughter through sheer determination. My phone buzzed with a text from him: "Storm's getting worse. Highways closed. You can stay at my place if you need to." I stared at the message, confused since I was already here, when I realized he must have sent it earlier and it had only just delivered due to the spotty service in the storm. Without thinking through the implications, operating on pure emotion and perhaps the surreal quality of the evening, I typed back, "Only if it's your bed." The moment after I hit send, horror washed over me. What had I done? This wasn't some romantic comedy, this was my career, my professional reputation. I frantically typed another message: "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was completely inappropriate. Please ignore that." But the damage was done. I heard footsteps on the stairs, then a gentle knock at the door. My heart pounding, I opened it to find Daniel standing there, phone in hand, expression unreadable. "Emma," he said quietly. "We should talk." I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. "I am so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. It was a terrible joke. I would never." "Emma," he interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, mortification burning through me. He entered but remained standing near the door, maintaining a respectful distance. "I need to be very clear about something," he said. "I'm your boss. There's a power dynamic there that can't be ignored." "I know," I said miserably. It was completely unprofessional. "I understand if you want me to transfer departments or even leave the company. That's not what I'm saying." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What I'm saying is that I've been very careful about maintaining professional boundaries with you precisely because I've felt something. Something I shouldn't feel for someone who reports to me." My head snapped up. "What?" His eyes met mine, vulnerability evident in a way I'd never seen before. "I've been attracted to you since your interview, Emma. But I've been in business long enough to know how complicated workplace relationships can be, especially with our positions. And then there's Lily to consider." I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. "I'm not saying anything can happen between us," he continued. "I'm just saying that your text wasn't as one-sided as you might have thought. But we both need to be adults about this situation. I've had feelings for you too," I admitted quietly. "But I never planned to act on them. I respect you too much as a boss, and honestly, I've been intimidated by how together you seem, running a company, raising Lily on your own." A small smile touched his lips. "If you could see the chaos behind the scenes, you might be less impressed." The tension in the room shifted, something honest and raw replacing the embarrassment of moments before. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now, we get some sleep. In separate rooms," he added firmly. "And tomorrow, when we're back at the office, we pretend this conversation never happened while I talk to HR about restructuring so you report to Melissa instead of directly to me." "And after that?" I couldn't help asking. His expression softened. "After that, maybe we could get coffee sometime. Outside of work. And see where things go, with no professional complications." It wasn't a declaration of love or a dramatic embrace, but in that moment, it felt perfect, thoughtful, responsible, and still full of possibility. "I'd like that," I said. He nodded, relief evident in his posture. "Good night, Emma. For real this time." "Good night, Daniel." After he left, I lay awake for hours, replaying our conversation and wondering what might come next. The storm raged outside, but inside I felt a strange sense of calm, as if something that had been building for months had finally found its first expression. The next morning brought brilliant sunshine reflecting off mountains of snow. Daniel was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, making pancakes while on the phone with his sister about road conditions for picking up Lily. "There's coffee," he said, covering the phone briefly. His smile was warm but professional. We were back to our agreed boundaries. We carpooled to the office once the roads were cleared, maintaining casual conversation about work and the weather. True to his word, by the end of the day, I'd received an email about a departmental restructuring that would have me reporting to Melissa, the creative director, moving forward. 2 weeks later, after the restructuring was complete and officially documented, I found a handwritten note on my desk. "Coffee? Saturday at 10? Lily has karate until noon. D." Our first date was at a small cafe far from the office. Daniel arrived looking different somehow, more relaxed in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suits. We talked for hours, learning about each other outside the confines of work. He told me about his failed marriage, how his ex-wife had struggled with the responsibilities of parenthood and eventually decided it wasn't the life she wanted. I shared stories about my family, my dreams beyond marketing, my failed relationships with men who couldn't understand my career ambitions. "I should pick up Lily soon," he said eventually, though he made no move to leave. "I'd like to meet her properly sometime," I said. "Not as your employee, but as, whatever this is becoming." His expression grew serious. "She's the most important person in my life, Emma. Dating as a single parent means she's always going to be my priority." I wouldn't expect anything less, I assured him. We took things slowly after that. Professional at work, cautiously exploring our connection outside of it. I met Lily officially a month later, not as Daniel's girlfriend, but as his friend who was joining them for a museum trip. She was initially shy but warmed up when I showed genuine interest in her elaborate explanations of the dinosaur exhibits. "Dad says you're really smart at work," she told me as we sat eating ice cream afterward. "Your dad is pretty smart himself," I replied, catching Daniel's eye over her head. "Yeah, but he says you see things differently than he does. He says that's important." Daniel looked slightly embarrassed. "I may have mentioned your marketing insights once or twice." "Once or twice?" Lily rolled her eyes in a gesture so similar to her father's that I had to laugh. That day marked a turning point. Gradually, our separate lives began to intertwine. I joined them for movie nights and helped Lily with school projects. Daniel and I had dinner alone when his sister could babysit. We argued about marketing strategies and political news, challenged each other's perspectives, and slowly built something that felt increasingly solid. 6 months after the night of the blizzard, Daniel invited me over for dinner, mentioning that Lily would be at a friend's house. He seemed unusually nervous as he cooked, dropping utensils and checking the oven repeatedly. "Is everything okay?" I asked, wrapping my arms around him from behind as he stirred the sauce. He turned in my embrace, his expression serious. "I need to ask you something." My heart raced. We hadn't said, "I love you," yet, though I'd felt it growing within me for months. "Lily asked me this morning if you were going to be her stepmom someday." Not what I was expecting. "Oh," I managed. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I care about you very much, but those kinds of decisions take time." He took my hands in his. "But it made me realize we haven't really talked about where this is going." "Where do you want it to go?" I asked softly. "I want you in my life, Emma. In our lives. But I need to be sure you understand what you're signing up for. Being with me means being part of Lily's life too. It means school events and teenage drama eventually and all the complications that come with a child who has an absent mother." I squeezed his hands. "Daniel, I fell for you knowing you were a package deal. I care about Lily too, not just as an extension of you, but as her own person." "I love you," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out. "I think I have since that night in the blizzard when you sent that text and I realized I wasn't alone in feeling something." I laughed, tears springing to my eyes. "That mortifying text was the best mistake I ever made." "So was asking you to stay over," he murmured, pulling me closer. "Only if it's your bed," I whispered against his lips, finally making good on those impulsive words from months before. 1 year after the blizzard, I moved into their home. 2 years after, Daniel proposed during another snowstorm, Lily bouncing excitedly beside him as he knelt with the ring. 3 years after, we were married in a ceremony where Lily served as both flower girl and junior bridesmaid, proudly telling everyone how she helped her dad pick the perfect mom. Life isn't always smooth. Lily hit her teenage years with all the expected turbulence. Daniel and I navigated the challenges of being business colleagues and life partners. His ex-wife occasionally reappeared with complicated emotions in tow. But through it all, we built something beautiful together. A family formed not by obligation but by choice, by love that grew from an unexpected beginning. Sometimes I think about that night, about how close I came to deleting that impulsive text. How easily we might have continued as boss and employee, never knowing what could have been. It reminds me that the most meaningful journeys often begin with a moment of courage, or in my case, a moment of unfiltered honesty in the midst of a snowstorm. If you've enjoyed this story of taking chances and finding love in unexpected places, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us how life's most beautiful chapters often begin with moments of vulnerability. Sometimes the storms that strand us are exactly what we need to find our way home.